What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Mock Draft Guy YouTube channel. So if you're tuning into this video, it is Wednesday or after Wednesday by now, and you already know what time it is. It is time for my updated 2023 NFL mock draft after week 9 of the NFL season, officially halfway through the NFL season. Some big surprises here, especially in the draft order. You know, after halfway through the season, the draft order really starts to take some realistic shape. So we're seeing the Las Vegas Raiders after the halfway point of the season inside the top 3, something I didn't think that I would see. Same thing with the Steelers being in the top 5, even the Jaguars still being in the top 6, the Cardinals at 7, a lot of things. And then, of course, you have the Jets and the Giants towards the back end of the first round, something I wouldn't think I would see for quite some time. So this season is definitely starting to take shape as one of the more surprising seasons that we've seen in quite some time. But enough of this chit chat. Let's get into it. So the first pick here, obviously, you have the Houston Texans. And if you're picking number 1 in this draft, you are picking a quarterback, my friend. I don't care who it is. I'm going to go with Bryce Young here. I think it really just depends on how they performed the week prior. So, you know, if you guys are avid college football watchers like I am, you know that Bryce Young did everything he could. He left it all out on the field against a really tough LSU team. And then you have CJ Stroud, who had probably the worst game of his collegiate career. I'm pretty sure he was like 10 of 22 passing or 10 of 24, 76 yards, against a not so great Northwestern team. So that doesn't change my opinion on CJ Stroud. I still think he's fantastic. Everyone has their bad day, but if you're going to ask me on who I think the number 1 overall pick would be on a week-to-week basis after last week's performance, I'm going to go with Bryce Young. And then, of course, the consolation prize to Bryce Young being the number 1 overall pick is going to be CJ Stroud going to the Carolina Panthers. A beautiful fit, in my opinion. Then you go over to number 3. And I've planted these seeds in everyone's mind so far throughout this series, and I'm going to keep saying it. I do think that Derek Carr's days as a Vegas Raider are numbered, especially with a potential out, a trade or a cut of a cap hit of $5 million when you owe the guy like $38 million for the next 3 years after this. After the performance that they've had, I'm not paying Derek Carr almost $40 million to get me the 3rd overall pick in the draft. I'm going with quarterback. I'm still going with Will Levis, and I'm going off of what all the draft scouts are saying, or what everyone's saying about the draft scouts, how they salivate over this guy. And I think after the combine, they're really going to think we're going to see what kind of a freak athlete Will Levis is. So you know that people love combine statistics. So I'm just kind of projecting what I think is going to happen. But I think Will Levis will be a Raider if things stay the way that they are. And then, I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers kind of fall ass backwards into a situation where they could either draft Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Peter Skoronski, or Keely Ringo. But I'm going to go with Jalen Carter. I think that he is the best player in the draft. I know that that's a crazy thing, saying that Will Anderson's still on the board, saying that Jalen Carter is the best player in the draft. Look at how well he played against Tennessee this past week. It just solidified the fact that I think he is the best player in the entire draft. And I mean, either way, you can't really go wrong. They're all big positions of need. Maybe not so much edge for the Pittsburgh Steelers because you got TJ Watt, you got Alex Highsmith, guys who definitely performed very, very well. But I am going to go with Jalen Carter. You know, Cam Hayward is getting on the older side, and they never really replaced Stephon Tuitt after he unexpectedly retired. So I'm going to go with Jalen Carter. He's a guy that could be a 4-3 3-tech, or he could be a 3-4 edge rusher, and he would be an absolute beast on the inside, on the interior of that defensive line. And then kind of the same thing. It's a consolation prize. If you're sitting at number 5 and you have some believe is the best player in the entire draft, you're going to have to take him. So Will Anderson Jr. pairs very, very well with Aiden Hutchinson, who's turning out to be a great player for the Detroit Lions. Probably the only bright spot on that defense so far this year. I'm going to go with Will Anderson here. Then at number 6, I still think the interior of the defensive line could use some work with Jacksonville. I think it's a little too early to be taking an offensive tackle. Jawan Taylor has actually played okay, considering how horrific he's been so far in his career. So I don't know if I'm going to waste the number 6 overall pick on someone who's going to be a right tackle. Just saying, especially if it's on the weaker side of the tackle classes. We've seen some great ones in years past. This is a good one, but it's not necessarily a strength of the draft. So I am going to go with Brian Breesy here. I think that fills a big need on the defensive line for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they get a great player. Then at number 7, I know I've been preaching the entire time. This might be the first time for the Arizona Cardinals I do not take a offensive tackle in the first round. But I'm going to go with Kelee Ringo. Best cornerback in the entire draft. It's a need for the Arizona Cardinals. They are a team that are spiraling out of control very, very fast. Cliff Kingsbury's seat is hotter than Satan's ass right now. Kyler Murray, the Kyler Murray extension is looking like a forced mistake by the Arizona Cardinals organization. Their offensive line is going to be in shambles, already is, but in the offseason it's going to be in shambles. There's a lot of things wrong with this team. And I think they should start turning it around by getting a number 1 cornerback. Don't get me wrong. I think Byron Murphy is great, but I think he would be better with Kelee Ringo next to him. I don't think anyone could really argue that. Moving on to number 8, you have the Chicago Bears, who, Justin Fields has looked great the last few weeks. He put up easily the best performance of his NFL career against the Miami Dolphins. Only threw for about 150 yards, but did throw for 3 touchdowns and had 178 yards on the ground and a touchdown. The most rushing yards by a quarterback in the NFL in a regular season game since the 1940s. That cannot be overlooked. A fantastic performance. He's definitely starting to turn his second season around, and he's starting to look like the player that we thought the Chicago Bears were going to get. Nevertheless, I know they went out and drafted Chase Claypool, and I know that I've been hell-bent on getting the Chicago Bears a weapon. I'm still going to stick with that, and I'm going to stick with who I think is the number 1 wide receiver in this class, and that's Quentin Johnston. They just added 6'6" Chase Claypool for a second-round pick, which I thought was not great value for the Chicago Bears. He's 6'6" and he can run a 4.4. Why not add another guy that's 6'4", 215 pounds that could run a 4.4? Just get Justin Fields as many weapons as possible. At least that's what I'm thinking. Then at number 9, you get the Green Bay Packers. A number of ways they can go. Skoronski's still on the board here. They don't necessarily need secondary help, but there are wide receivers here. And obviously, you guys see Jackson Smith-Njigba sitting right there. But I'm going to bypass Jackson Smith-Njigba, and I'm going to go to Jordan Addison. I think this is a guy that's being really, really overlooked as either the best or the second best wide receiver in this entire draft class. The dude is just dynamic. He's been fantastic for USC this season. I feel like he really, really gets overlooked. And I honestly feel like it's because on the East Coast, USC constantly play at like 9 or 10 o'clock. So a lot of people really aren't talking about USC at that time because they're very, very quietly one of the better teams in college football. And I feel like I don't hear anything about them. But Jordan Addison is the catalyst for that offense. He is Caleb Williams' number 1 option by far. And I think Addison would be a fantastic addition to a very, very anemic Green Bay Packers offense. Moving on to number 10, you have the Philadelphia Eagles here. And I'm going to go with an edge rusher because, like I said last week, I know they got Robert Quinn, but he voided the last 2 years of his contract. So he will be a free agent. Brendan Graham is also 34 years old. It's time to get some young blood in there. And I like Myles Murphy a lot. I know last week this spot was designated to Felix Anudike-Uzomah. We will be seeing him soon. Don't worry. But I think if Myles Murphy is sitting here at number 10, I don't really think that you could beat that value. That's a true 4-3 edge rusher right there. I think that it's a perfect fit. So pick number 11 here. Every area of weakness for the Seattle Seahawks, or at least what we thought was going to be an area of weakness for the Seattle Seahawks, has turned out to be a strength so far. I thought the secondary was going to be a weak group. Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen are looking like fantastic steals. Well, we already knew Tariq Woolen was going to be a fantastic steal. Kobe Bryant has really stepped up his game lately as well. RIP the GOAT. But, I feel like besides for Jordan Brooks, we don't really have a playmaker in the middle of that defense. Jordan Brooks is a fantastic linebacker, a tackling machine, consistently at the top of the league in tackles. I think he had like 184 tackles last year, some crazy, crazy number like that. So I'm going to add someone that adds juice in the middle of that defense. And I'm going to go with Trenton Simpson. I know it might be a little high for an off-ball linebacker, but I'm going to go with Trenton Simpson here. I think that he is a sideline-to-sideline playmaker, and I think that he would just add a tremendous value to that new look defense of the Seattle Seahawks. Moving on, you have the Detroit Lions yet again, and yet again, I'm going straight back to defense. Don't let it fool you. They only gave up 9 points to the Green Bay Packers. It is not the Green Bay Packers of old. And not only that, they still have the worst defense by far. So I'm going to go with Joey Porter Jr., adding potentially, who some people may think, by the end of the process, you might be seeing Joey Porter as the number 1 cornerback on a lot of people's boards. I still think he's number 2. I'm going to pick him right here. I think he adds he immediately becomes the most talented cornerback on that roster. Then you have the Houston Texans. They just got Bryce Young. They got their franchise quarterback. Let's get him a wide receiver. I mean, the Houston Texans struggled to get open on a snap basis. So I'm going to go with Jackson Smith-Njigba here. A lot of people still view him as the number 1 wide receiver. I'm not saying that he can't be. I just value the other guys just a little bit more, but he's still fantastic, and he would fit perfectly in that offense. Then moving on to Indianapolis, I mean, if you saw the game against the Pats, Sam Ehlinger must see Josh Uche and Matthew Judon in his nightmares. I'm going to go with Peter Skoronski here. This offensive line has disappointed tenfold this season. With some great players on it, they have been terrible. I like Skoronski. I think he's a little bit small. Probably will be a guard in the NFL or play right tackle. But he's the most polished lineman in the entire draft. So I'm going to go with that. They desperately need an offensive lineman. And then I'm trying to solve the Atlanta Falcons defensive line issues at number 15. Pass rush is still an issue for this team. So I'm going to go with my boy. I'm going to go with Felix Anudike-Uzomah. A slight drop from last week. I believe I had him at number 10 last week, so he goes to 15. Another guy, I think it's either 7.5 or 8 sacks he has on the season. He has just been fantastic. He had 15.5 sacks last year, 6'4", 255 pounds. You got to love it. Moving on to number 16, you have the Washington Commanders. I'm going to stick with the same pick that I had last week. I'm still going with Hendon Hooker. I know he didn't have a great showing against Georgia, but there are a lot of pro quarterbacks that probably wouldn't have a great showing against Georgia. Their defense is just fantastic. So I'm going to stand pat on that, and I'm going to go with Hendon Hooker again this week. And then moving on at 17, a guy who, I've said it once, I will say it again. If you don't watch North Carolina, you're really missing out, because Josh Downs is someone who is completely electric with the football in his hands. This past week, 15 catches, 166 yards, and a touchdown, just adding to his awesome numbers already. And just his draft stock just keeps on rising. I think he's the clear-cut wide receiver 4 in this year's draft class. And I think the New England Patriots could very much benefit from whoever, Bailey Zappi, Mac Jones, whoever it may be, Brian Hoyer again. I think Josh Downs is absolutely electric with the ball in his hands, and I think he would immediately make this offense a little bit more scary. Moving on to number 18, you have the Cincinnati Bengals, and I flip-flop here and there. I still think they need some secondary help. Right now, I'm not in love with the picks that are available. I do love Cam Smith as a prospect. I'm going to go with Michael Mayer, though. I think that with the entirety of their tight end roster being free agents this upcoming year, I could see them bringing back Hayden Hurst, but really that's it. And you add someone who's a great blocker and also a fantastic receiver in Michael Mayer. And then at number 19, you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I just talked about Cam Smith. I am going to go out and get Cam Smith here, and the reason being is, they need secondary help. They have a lot of free agents and not a lot of money. They're going to have to make some tough decisions on some upcoming free agents. So why not replace him with a great player in Cam Smith? Then you have the Denver Broncos here at number 20. And I'm going to go with Paris Johnson Jr. I got flamed on Twitter for picking Nolan Smith over Broderick Jones, which I didn't think was going to be. I never thought that was going to be any kind of argument. But my God, the Denver Broncos fans were not happy with me last week. But I digress. I'm going to take their advice on this one. And I mean, Paris Johnson Jr. sitting here, it's a no-brainer here. It solves one of their offensive line issues here. Moving on to the LA Chargers here. I'm going to go with Kayshon Boutte. I mean, Keenan Allen is getting up there in age. He hasn't been recovering from injuries as fast as you would like. Mike Williams is a fantastic receiver and a mismatch nightmare. He's just never on the field. And then you're left with Josh Palmer and DeAndre Carter. And yeah, they got the win with those two guys at wide receiver, but you need someone that could stay on the field and be a legitimate target. Keishawn Boutte has really turned his season around after not playing well. I think the first like 3 or 4 games, he's really turned it around and shown that he is a potential round 1 wide receiver. And I'm going to take the opportunity here. Then moving on to number 22, I feel like this pick is kind of bad after the showing that Justin Houston had. 2.5 sacks and an interception on Monday Night Football against the Saints. But I am going to have to go with Isaiah Foskey here. I think this is either the second or the third week in a row that I'm going with Isaiah Foskey, so I'm not even going to waste my breath. Same deal as last week here. Then moving on, you have the Tennessee Titans, and I am going to go with an offensive lineman here. I'm going to go with Broderick Jones. There's just so many uncertainties on that offensive line. They have played well so far this year, considering that it's not a really inspiring group. But on the opposite end of that, you do have to, you can't go, oh, well, they played good, last year and they weren't fully healthy. So we're just going to go out and throw the same unit out there. That's not how that works. You have to try and make that unit stronger. I think Broderick Jones, like I said, a little slender, 310 pounds, 6'6". Don't know how well he'll perform at left tackle at the NFL level, but there is a spot for him on the right side of that offensive line. So I like the fit there. Then moving on to Seattle at pick number 24 yet again. And I'm going to go with Nolan Smith. And I know you guys might think I'm an absolute lunatic for taking Trenton Simpson and Nolan Smith in the first round. I really don't care, because if you watch Georgia, when Nolan Smith is healthy, he is all over the football field. He is making plays in the backfield. He's sacking the quarterback. He's pressuring the quarterback, tackles for loss. The sack numbers might not be there, but his production is through the roof, and he's a fantastic football player. I am going to go with Nolan Smith here. I don't really care what you say. And then moving on to the New York Jets. Now, there's a couple players I like here. I like Tyree Wilson. I like Antonio Johnson. I also like Noah Sewell here as well. You got C.J. Mosley coming to the end of his contract, and Quan Alexander only being a 1-year signing, who's been fantastic. But Ola Fashanu here has really, really flown up the board. And shout out Rudy Campos on Twitter. Great follow. He does mock drafts alongside me. I'm going to get him on here one of these weeks as well. He really, really turned me on to Ola here. I mean, I knew about him. I thought of him more as a day 2 prospect. If you watch, there's some great breakdowns on YouTube of, his athleticism, his footwork, his strength. He's fantastic. And got to see him in action. Watched a little bit of the Penn State game, and he is the real deal. He is absolutely legit. I'm going to buy into the hype, and I'm going to say that Joe D loves his offensive lineman. This is coming from a Jet fan, so I definitely know that, and I think that would be a great fit, replacing either George Fant or Mekhi Becton. Both uncertainties. George Fant is a free agent. Mekhi Becton is made out of glass, bones, and paper skin. I'm going to go with Fashanu here. Moving on to number 25, you have the Dallas Cowboys. And at number 25, number 26, I am going to go with Antonio Johnson. And the reason why is, there are some guys here, Christian Gonzalez, Clark Phillips, Emmanuel Forbes, Devin Witherspoon, who's been flying up the board as well. The reason being I like Antonio Johnson is the versatility of he could play safety, he could play slot corner. He's got the size to play out wide as well. I like it. I like adding the versatility to Dan Quinn's defense. Moving on, you got the New York Giants here at number 27. I can't believe the Jets are at 25 and the Giants are at 27. It's a wonderful time here in New York, let me tell you. I'm going to go with versatility on the defensive line. There are a lot of free agents on that defensive line. Also, O'Shea Zimenez is a free agent as well. That is a rush outside linebacker as well. Not a rush outside linebacker, but he is an outside linebacker as well. I like Tyree Wilson here a lot. This is a guy who is lined up on the edge for Texas Tech, as a D tackle for Texas Tech, and as a 275-pound outside linebacker. You got to love someone that could play all 3 positions. Can he do that at the NFL level? That remains to be seen, but we have to go off of what we've seen, and Tyree Wilson is an absolute beast. So I'm going to go with him there. And at number 28, you have the Kansas City Chiefs, and I got to check my phone real quick. I always forget the picks. Another new face in my first round. I don't think I've had him in my first round yet. I'm going to go with BJ Ojulari, someone who has really, really turned it on. Same thing kind of like with Keishawn Boutte. Hit a slow start to the season, but he's really, really showing out. 6'3", 250-pound defensive end. I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have to make some tough calls on some players. You know, they have Patrick Mahomes is coming into his contract extension. They're going to have to eventually pay Travis Kelce and a few of these guys. I think Frank Clark is a prime cut candidate along with some other guys. Derek Nottie is a free agent as well. I like BJ Ojulari a lot here. I think it's about time that I show him some love here in the first round. And you have the Minnesota Vikings. I know I've loved Clark Phillips to the Minnesota Vikings for the last like 3 weeks. And I've said his size kind of scares me. And don't get me wrong, Clark Phillips is having an incredible season. 5 interceptions, 2 pass defendeds already. He has been fantastic. But I am going to switch up here. I like the size. I like Christian Gonzalez. You got 6'3" or 6'2". I'm drawing a blank there. 200 pounds, physical. Another guy who's having a great season. 3 interceptions, 7 pass defense as well. I am going to go Christian Gonzalez here. I like the size. Similar skill set. But I think the size overall wins, especially in today's NFL. Moving on to number 31, I'm doing it. Bijan Robinson to the Buffalo Bills. Jesus Christ, can you imagine that offense? And then with the last pick in the first round, you have the Philadelphia Eagles again. And I'm going to go with Clark Phillips. I think that it's about time we started addressing the secondary in Philadelphia. I think Avonte Maddox is a free agent. Then you have James Bradbury, who's a free agent as well, and Darius Slay, who's playing fantastic, but he isn't getting any younger. It's about time that you add some talent in that secondary. I like Clark Phillips there. And then it always shows 32 picks for this year. We all know that there's only 31 first-round picks this year. So I'm going to go to my GOAT kicker, Noah Ruggles here, ranked 704. I think that's ludicrous. I think he should be ranked 4th out of everyone. So we're going to go with Noah Ruggles with the last pick in the first one. I don't know how that's not an F. How is that pick not an F? Whatever. It doesn't matter. But there you go. There you have it. There is my 2023 NFL mock draft after week 9 of the NFL season. We are officially halfway through. And I just wanted to say, if you guys are still watching, first off, thank you guys so much. These videos have propelled my channel tenfold. You guys have been absolutely fantastic. The comment section, you guys love the player profiles. You guys love as well. I can't thank you guys enough for your kind words. I love engaging with you guys in the comment section. So please leave a like. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you next time.